All right, everybody. Pat Dennis here with Synaptic Advisory Partners, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how we could conduct home health assessments on the Salesforce platform using our native application called Youreka. Basically, what we're going to be doing is going out into patient or member homes, collecting some information about their health and mapping it back to Salesforce so that we can use that information for all sorts of different processes as a part of our business. So let's dive into the use case here just a little bit. I'm going to play the role as somebody who's a home health or a care coordinator who, like I said, is responsible for going to visit patients or members in the home. We're going to be asking individuals about their health. We're going to be completing this assessment, and a lot of times we've seen customers completing these home health assessments on paper or outdated or old disparate systems that make it challenging to really have a seamless process for collecting that information. So we're going to use Youreka to do that. And then when we're done with our assessment, basically we're going to be mapping that data back into Salesforce for us to be able to use. So again, here's kind of the overall demo flow. We're going to be starting inside of Salesforce. We're going to generate some assessments that we're going to fill out. We're going to complete that assessment on site, and then we're going to look at the data that's just been collected. Okay? So let me flip on over here to my Salesforce environment. What you should be seeing on my screen right now is an example of a list of contacts, or it could be accounts in the system that represent people that I'm responsible for managing their care. So in this case, I just have this list of people with their birth date and their phone number and their email address. Their email addresses, by the way, look really cool. But in this case, I just have a group of people that I'm responsible for visiting. Now, we could be filtering this list based on their risk, a risk score. Maybe we have a risk score on each of their records that indicates that I need to be prioritizing these people first. Maybe we should just be prioritizing people based on the last date that we visited them. There's a whole lot of different ways that we could be essentially queuing up the right people for us to be going to visit, and it really just depends on the different business processes. But here, I'm just going to show you an example. We'll have two people here. We'll say one person's name is Beck or Bennett. We'll do Bennett down here, and we'll do Allegra Campos. And these two people will create a form for. And in this case, we have a form in the system that's called a health assessment. And when we do that, we're just going to generate it for both these contacts inside of Salesforce. And that's it. And as a part of this demonstration, that's all we would need to do in order to get those forms queued up for our on-site visits. So let me move over to our mobile device here, and I'll just quickly sync it up. And what you'll see here is actually that the two forms that we just created are now available for us in the system. And like I said, there's so many different ways that we could get these forms here. It could be as a result of automation. We could batch forms out to our different users. It could be based on so many different variables. So it kind of stands to a business process review in terms of what the right solution is. But in this case, we now have both of our forms that we need to be filling out for our two different patients. And so now I'm going to go to Allegra's house, and we'll fill out some information about Allegra. So let's go ahead and open it up here. And what we'll see is this is an assessment that we can just very easily fill out based on some information that is being asked of us. So the first thing that we'll notice here is that the entire form is pre-populated. This is different from, like I said, using paper forms or sometimes form applications that are not connected to a central database where your patient information is currently living. We are pulling these values from Salesforce where Allegra's patient information is currently being housed. And that way we can pre-populate the form, which makes it easier on our users so they don't have to type all this stuff in again. That's really annoying, and it takes a lot more time. We're trying to be more efficient here. So we'll take a notice. All of the different information here has been pre-populated. If we want to make updates to certain pieces of this information, like let's say that we have her phone number wrong as we speak with her in her home, she says that it's not the right phone number. We can make an update to that phone number, and when we save this form, it'll actually update her phone number back in the system. Moving on, basically what we'll do is just start to answer some basic questions about her health. So actually the first thing that we'll say is, does she have access to reliable transportation? In this case, I'm going to say that no, she does not. Now we'll move on to the next part of the exam. So this is where we're actually just going to look at some information or look at her skin conditions. So we'll say, does she have any dermatology-related concerns? If she does, we'll say maybe there's a suspected issue. And so now, as a part of this, by selecting suspected, we're effectively able to open up a whole new set of questions. And I'm actually going to flip this over here into portrait or into landscape mode. Excuse me. So here, what we can see is we've actually selected suspected, and because we did, now we opened up a whole new section of questions. And again, this is what I'm talking about when I say this is a benefit to not using a paper form like we've seen a lot of customers use in the past. We are able to guide this care coordinator through their exam without having to show them questions that are irrelevant to the conversation at hand. So because we said suspected, now we'll answer some questions about the mole that we might see on their skin. It is greater than 1/4 of an inch in diameter, and we noticed that it's changed size or shape in the last 6 months, and we'll also say that it is itchy. We're going to use dictate in this case to make this happen. So the patient has said that the mole is itchy. All right. We'll make some quick adjustments. We all know how voice dictation can go sometimes. But there we are. So we've indicated some information about that. And we'll actually take a quick photo of the mole. Now this is where I get plenty of awesome feedback about the images that I pull up for these demos. And the mole is definitely one of the crowd favorites. So we'll take a quick photo of a mole that we might see on somebody's skin. If we need to mark up the mole, indicate, excuse me here, we're flipping all over the place. We can indicate that there it is. We can take notes if we want to. And now here we are back filling out the rest of the form. So we're able to capture images and photos inside of our Youreka form while we're filling out the rest of the information about this patient. So there's a lot of ways that we can collect really valuable information. The next part here is that we're going to talk about the medications that this patient is taking. So we'll just click add here and just basically ask them, are you taking any medicine right now? And then we can store a whole set of different medications inside of our system that we can associate with here. So maybe they're taking Robax and the date of their prescription was back on August 1st. That's when they started taking it. And we'll say that they're taking it orally and their dosage is 5, for example. I have no idea if that's a proper dosage for Robax, but we'll go with it here. If we needed to add another medication, we could certainly do that here as well and open up as many different sections as we need to. But in this case, we'll just kind of keep going on here. This next section is about collecting height and weight information. Maybe this would already be pre-populated from their record in Salesforce, but in this case, I don't have it connected, so or we don't have this information yet. So here we'll just ask how tall they are. And in this case, Allegra is 6 feet tall, so she's 72 inches tall. And she is 140 pounds. And so when we select that, what we'll notice here is we're able to not only calculate the body mass index that she has, but we can also show some helpful information to our care coordinator about body mass index. So we can say, this is kind of what the general guidelines are in terms of if you're underweight, if you're overweight, etc. So again, just showing and hiding information that could be helpful for our user at that point in time. The next portion is just some other health conditions that we might want to be capturing information for. So here, if we indicate that they have asthma, maybe we open up a whole section about asthma-related procedures and medical devices in this case. The same would be true for with diabetes, right? So if we know that they have type 1, or in this case, I guess it would be type 1 diabetes because she was 140 pounds, most likely, I would guess. But here, maybe we can answer some questions about, is she following a diabetic diet? Maybe the answer is no. Is she tracking blood sugar results? no, and does she have pain in her feet? Maybe the answer is yes, right? So this is kind of an equation for a recipe for disaster, I would say, in terms of a diabetic patient. And we'll notice that here in a moment. I'll come back to this detail. Finally, if we want to answer some questions about depression, by opening up this next section, we can ask a whole new series of questions. In this case, we have the PHQ-9 showing up here. If the answer to these two questions are yes and yes, about feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, then we can answer a whole new set of questions here as a result of that. But for this, we'll just say no and no and kind of close things out. So here, we'll just kind of finish out the entire exam by saying, do they have a prescription delivery service? In this case, the answer is no. And then we'll just answer some basic questions, or collect some basic information about how they feel about their primary care physician. So maybe they said, I don't like them. And we'll finish up. So really quick here, we'll just click View Insights at the very end of this. And what this is going to do is it's going to push back all the information up into Salesforce. It's going to analyze the form that we just filled out. Any Salesforce automation, you can see there's an example right there of a notification that we just pushed. Any automation, reports, dashboards, everything is going to be updated as a result of the new information in the system. And we're also able to give our care coordinators some important information about what they've just collected. So in this case, we've got two what we call discoveries that have been generated based on the answers in this form. The first one is that we sense that there's a risk of non-compliance when it comes to their prescriptions. And that was because they didn't have a prescription delivery service and they don't have access to reliable transportation. So there's a good chance that they might not be keeping up with their medications. The second thing here is that we have a suspected diabetic nephropathy, which I guess would be as a result of them not having a diabetic diet, not having good tracking of their blood sugar, and maybe having pain in their feet. So what we're able to do with these discoveries is Youreka is literally analyzing the combinations of responses in these forms and telling us some important information that me as a care coordinator might not have picked up on my own. And so this is a really good way for us to kind of bake in institutional knowledge into these forms and give that knowledge to everybody out in the field regardless of their level of experience. Secondly, we're using Einstein AI. So this is a Salesforce feature that we kind of plug into. So we're able to show Einstein sentiment where we're taking the text that was analyzed here in terms of how they feel about their primary care physician. In this case, it looks like our model might need a little bit of training because it thinks that it was positive, but I would argue that the phrase, I don't like them, is fairly negative. But you get the idea about that we can take free text and pass it back to Einstein, and Einstein can then evaluate that and tell us whether or not this is a positive or a negative comment. And the same is true for Einstein Vision, where we're analyzing the photo, and we can use image recognition models to tell us some important information about the photos that we're capturing in the field. So we'll submit this information back to Salesforce, and by doing so, we can see now that that first form has been submitted, and now I can go on to Benedict's home and do the same assessment for Benedict. But let's go back into Salesforce here and quickly take a look at what we've done. So if we refresh our page here, we'll go to Allegra's record inside of Salesforce. And what we can actually see is that the information that we've entered here has been updated. Remember, we updated Allegra's phone number, so now that phone number has been adjusted in the system. This is a way for us to keep really good information always up to date inside of Salesforce as a part of going out in the field and getting that information verified by the patient. But then also we can click on this clinical data section and start to see some of the information that's being collected in the field, like the medications that we indicated out there. The same could be true if we were pulling in patient encounters, maybe from an EHR, or if we were recording information about patient devices, medical devices that they were using. This information can be passed back and forth between the Youreka form, between Salesforce, and even an EHR that might be integrated with Salesforce. But all this data is now available for us right here on the record. And then finally, we can actually start to see the health forms that were filled out right here on the record too. So we can just simply click on this view section, and this is going to open up the entire health assessment that was just filled out. It's all right there for us, including the photos that were taken right there on site. So it's very helpful for us to be able to see all the information that was collected right here on Allegra's record while we were out in the field. The other thing I'll show you here is, I think we got a glimpse of it earlier, but we can start to see the different health assessments that have been completed, as well as any and all information that we want to, depending on how we want to slice and dice it. So in this case, we can kind of see how many health assessments have been completed, what status they might be in. Looks like 5 of them have been completed, and we still have Benedict's to do. He's still in a new stage. We can see which coordinators are the ones out there doing the assessments. In this case, I'm on my own on this. We can see which geographic regions these different assessments are being completed in, as well as maybe what some of the insights might be from the forms. In this case, we're showing you the different discoveries that are being generated while we're out there conducting these home health assessments. So next, I'm just going to show you kind of what it looks like to edit these form templates. So I'm going to go in here and just actually find that home health assessment that we have. Let's see if I can find it in here. So inside of Salesforce, what we're able to do is we can actually edit the templates that our teams are using out in the field when we're collecting this information. So here you can see this is actually the template editor that allows us to edit which questions are being answered out in the field on the mobile device. And so in this case, maybe I need to add a couple of questions because we've updated our process. So I'm going to update this version here. I'm going to call this 1.2. And then what I'm going to do is I can actually just start to drag and or maybe rearrange questions that are here on the canvas. So I'm just going to drag this new question onto the canvas. And here what we're going to be able to do is just answer some or select which kinds of questions we want people to be filling out. You can see there's a lot of different kinds that we have here. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it as general text. And we'll call this primary care provider. And so maybe this might be the person that's there in the home with our patient that's primarily responsible for taking care of them. Maybe we want to indicate who that person is for our reporting purposes. So we can click that this we can click OK, and now this this question is available for us. And actually what I'm going to do, I kind of did it in reverse order here, but do they have a primary care provider? And here we'll actually make this a yes/no question. And so now we're asking whether or not they have a primary care provider, and if they do have one, I want to ask who it is. And so we're only going to show this question. We're going to click on this display logic tab here, and we're only going to show this question when they say they do have a primary care provider. So what we can do now is just simply click preview up here and see how this form now behaves. What we'll notice here is that the form looks exactly as it did before, but our new question is now available there for us. So when we click yes, now we can answer who that primary care provider is. So it's very easy for us to add new questions to these templates, and now we'll get it out to our members or to our care coordinators in the field. So we'll simply click save, click close, and then publish this template for our people to use. So now if I'm a care coordinator, I can go back to my contact list and I can find somebody new like Alan. And when I click create form, now what I'm able to do is indicate that I want that latest health assessment template that we're going to be using here. And if I go back over to my mobile device and click refresh, now what's going to happen is we'll see that Benedict's form is still ready for us to fill out, but we also have a brand new form for Alan, and we'll see that that's actually the version 1.2 as opposed to the 1.1. And when we go to Alan's house to fill out this information, we'll see it's pre-populated with all of Alan's information. We can make those same edits that we want to right there. And we can also fill out whether or not he has a primary care provider, and if he does, we can indicate who that person is. We'll simply save this information. Oh, looks like we got some required fields that we need to fill out. So we'll just quickly fill this information out and then submit it back to Salesforce. And when we do, that form is going to make its way back along with all the data, all the automation, as you can see right there. Everything's going to fire off at once. And when we go to Alan's record inside of Salesforce, we can now see Alan also has a form that was just filled out by our members in the field with those brand new questions indicated there. So it's very powerful for us to be able to deploy new forms out to our users to collect lots of health-related information about our populations, about our members, and have it all back stored inside of Salesforce for our business purposes. So I'm going to stop the demo there. Hopefully this has been helpful for you to understand exactly how you could use Salesforce and Youreka to conduct home health assessments and push all that data back into the system for the business.